Hey, can I see one of those if there's enough? Thank you. This was just passed out. It's nice.
I didn't remember a single thing.
She said possibly the last one.
On the screen, what does it say on the screen? Everyone has something to write with, their packet, and the video handout, correct?
No.
We are. We're not skipping them permanently, we're just skipping them for right now. Not right now. So, does everyone have, again, the packet and the video worksheet? And then Ms. Brooklyn is passing out your notes, so your guided notes for today's slides. So you need to have 3 things. And Brooklyn is still coming around. What's the question?
Are we supposed to, like, fill out this?
You should definitely put your name on your packet right away. And we're going to skip the very beginning because we're going to start with cells. So that's why I have the pages that start at 16. Okay, so you guys may have your iPads out if you want to follow along on the slides. And they are on Google Classroom. The slides are on Google Classroom. So the answers are on Google Classroom. Yes, the slides are on Google Classroom.
Now we learned the showers, but when it goes go east, we learn how to get I got you.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I speak to Eamon for a moment? You're not in trouble. I'm so sorry to bother you.
Not a problem.
Oh my God.
Yeah, let's wait until I go through the slides and watch not even
Oh, I didn't even give myself.
Right, so. Guys, I'm gonna turn the lights down a little bit. I want you to be able to see the slides. Can you still see to right? Is it too dark? I can turn it up. It's okay. Okay, good. So what do you guys think this is a picture of?
A cell.
Very good. A cell or several
Many
cells?
cells. One cell actually. Many cells actually.
Many cells actually. So the cell is outlined by what's called the cell membrane, and that's the outer boundary of the cell. And that gray dot in the middle, what do we call that?
It's
Does anybody remember
10:12
that?
right now.
I haven't had a
So
chance
you
to
know.
do your 3 quizzes yet, so I don't know how many of you guys remember or have been.
The core.
The core is geosphere, you're thinking. It's the nucleus. It's where the DNA is found. So the DNA, you guys all know the DNA is the instructions for life. Everybody knows that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to talk more about that too, but I just wanted to start out on the same page. So we're going to be talking about cells today and how they relate to life functions. So for the rest of the semester, guys, let's not talk. For the rest of the semester, we're going to, as I said, we're going to be working on biology, and we're going to be studying cells, and then we're going to be studying some body systems. Okay, so you guys will get to learn more about how your body works. So what is a cell? You might not be able to recognize a picture of one, but what is a cell really? It's actually a pretty wacky story, and so I really like this video that I'm going to show you, which goes through exactly how scientists of the time figured out, decided, collected evidence to prove that the cell is the basic unit of life. That's the basic cornerstone of the cell theory, is that the cell is the basic, smallest unit of life. Okay? So please give your attention to this video.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Just remember that your students can
So
see
the wacky
everything that
history
you do on your computer.
of the cell theory.
So they just saw all of those attendance notifications that were attached to each student. That can be confidential, so just be careful
One of
with
the
that.
great things about science is that when scientists make a discovery, it's not always in a prescribed manner, as in only in a laboratory under strict settings with white lab coats and all sorts of neat science.
Don't start your notes yet, just watch the video.
In reality,
The only thing you're supposed to be filling out right now is your video chart, like
major
usual.
scientific discoveries
So
are
just the
weird
first
and very
column and
different.
then the second column.
Case in point,
Let's
the
start
weird
this over.
history of the cell theory. There are three parts to the cell theory. One, all organisms are composed.
Any other questions real quick, or are we ready to watch? This is very short, it's only about 5 minutes, and it hits on all the things we really want to talk about today.
One of the great things about science is that when scientists make a discovery, it's not always in a prescribed manner, as in only in a laboratory under strict settings with white lab coats and all sorts of neat science gizmos that go. In reality, the events and people involved in some of the major scientific discoveries are as weird and varied as they get. My case in point, the weird history of the cell theory. There are three parts to the cell theory. One, all organisms are composed of one or more cells. Two, the cell is the basic unit of structure of organization and organisms. And three, all cells come from pre-existing cells. To be honest, this all sounds incredibly boring until you dig a little deeper into how the world of microscopic organisms and this theory came to be. It all started in the early 1600s in the Netherlands, where a spectacle maker named Zacharias Janssen is said to have come up with the first compound microscope, along with the first telescope. Claims are often disputed, as apparently he wasn't the only bored guy with a ton of glass lenses to play with at the time. Despite this, the microscope soon became a hot item that every naturalist or scientist at the time wanted to play with, making it much like the iPad of its
See,
day.
your students
One
for the
such
most part very
person was a
engaged.
fellow Dutchman by the name of Anton von Leeuwen, who heard about these microscope doohickeys, and instead of going out and buying one, he decided to make his own. It was a strange little contraption, as it looked more like a tiny paddle the size of a sunglass lens. If he had stuck two together, it probably would have made a wicked set of sunglasses that you couldn't see much out of. Anywho, once Leeuwenhoek had his microscope ready, he went to town looking at anything and everything he could with them, including the gunk on his teeth. Yes, you heard right. He actually discovered bacteria by looking at dental scrapings, which, when you keep in mind that people didn't brush their teeth much, if at all, back then, he must have had a lovely bunch of bacteria to look at. When he wrote about his discovery, he didn't call them bacteria as we know them today, but he called them animalcules because they looked like little animals to him. While Leeuwenhoek was staring at his teeth gunk, he was also sending letters to a scientific colleague in England by the name of Robert Hooke. Hooke was a guy who really loved all aspects of science, so he dabbled in a little bit of everything, including physics, chemistry, and biology. Thus it is Hooke that we can thank for the term the cell, as he was looking at a piece of cork under his microscope, and the little chambers he saw reminded him of cells, or the rooms monks slept in their monasteries. Think college dorm rooms, but without the TVs, computers, and really annoying roommates. Hooke was something of an underappreciated scientist of his day. Something he brought upon himself as he made the mistake of locking horns with one of the most famous scientists ever, Sir Isaac Newton. Remember when I said Hooke dabbled in many different fields? Well, after Newton published a groundbreaking book on how planets move due to gravity, Hooke made the claim that Newton had been inspired by Hooke's work in physics. Newton, to say the least, did not like that, which sparked a tense relationship between the two that lasted even after Hooke died, as quite a bit of Hooke's research, as well as his only portrait, was misplaced due to Newton. Much of it was rediscovered, thankfully, after Newton's time, but not his portrait, as sadly no one knows what Robert Hooke looked like. Fast forward to the 1800s, where two German scientists discovered something that today we might find rather obvious, but helped tie together what we now know as the cell theory. The first scientist was Matthias Schleiden, a botanist who loved to study plants under a microscope. From his years of studying different plant species, it finally dawned on him that every single plant he had looked at were all made of cells. At the same time, on the other end of Germany was Theodor Schwann, a scientist who not only studied slides of animal cells under the microscope and got a special type of nerve cell named after him, but also invented rebreathers for firefighters and had a kicking pair of sideburns. After studying animal cells for a while, he too came to the conclusion that all animals were made of cells. Immediately, he reached out via snail mail, as Twitter had yet to be invented, to other scientists working in the same field, and it was Schleiden that got back to him, and the two started working on the beginnings of the cell theory. A bone of contention arose between them, as for the last part of the cell theory, that cells come from pre-existing cells, Schleiden didn't exactly subscribe to that thought, as he swore cells came from pre-cell formation, where they just kind of spontaneously crystallized into existence. That's when another scientist named Rudolf Virchow stepped in with research showing that cells did come from other cells. Research that was actually, how to put it, borrowed without permission from a Jewish scientist by the name of Robert Remennick, which led to two more feuding scientists. Thus, from T-Kung to Torking-off Newton, crystallization to Schwann cells, the cell theory came to be an important part of biology today. Some things we know about science today may seem boring, but how we came to know them is incredibly fascinating. So if something bores you, dig deeper. There's really got a really weird story behind it somewhere.
Okay, thank you guys for your attention. That was great. I appreciate it. So these slides, as I said, are on Google Classroom. And the notes that you have in front of you, they don't go directly through the slides necessarily. I'm going to need you to be paying attention to what I'm saying to write down the information too, okay? So I will go, if you have any questions, raise your hand and stop me. Yes, Ryder. Yes, that single sheet of paper, not the video. We'll talk about the video chart later, but for right now, focus on the note page. That was the third handout. Okay, so what do you guys think about that story? Was it an easy thing to accomplish? Did everybody agree? No, there was a lot of disagreement, especially about whether life arose spontaneously. People used to think that flies grew out of mud puddles, or because they would, or like bodies of water, because they would see the larvae appear there. Have you guys ever seen that? Like if you let a swimming pool sit for a little while, it'll get different kinds of bug larvae in it, more like a baby swim pool. In any case, the point is that he thought that cells came out of nothing, that they were spontaneously generated. You guys know spontaneous, right? Spontaneously generated meaning coming out of nothingness. And so there was debate about whether it was spontaneous generation or whether cells came from pre-existing cells. So I want to talk a little bit about what does it mean to be living? So we know from studying the four spheres, which of the four spheres is the one that includes the living component of Earth? Amen. Biosphere, that's right. And so these other things that we've been learning about when we studied the atmosphere, the geosphere, and the hydrosphere, those are all non-living components, right? But are they important? Yes. They affect the ecosystem. They affect the surroundings and the organisms that live there. So as I said, the cell is the basic unit of life, and it has a boundary that separates it from the outside world, and that boundary is called the plasma membrane. It also has a bunch of what are called organelles, meaning little organs. We're going to talk about those later. I'm not as worried about you guys knowing every function of every organelle as I am about you understanding that life is based on cells. Okay, so the cell is the basic fundamental unit of life. If you're not made of at least one cell, then you're not alive. So here's a picture of some cheek cells through the microscope. We have a microscope now, guys, that I'm super excited about. It's Wi-Fi, and so we can look at different things. I have figured out how to project it onto my iPad, but I can't figure out how to project it onto the screen from my iPad.
I can help you with that.
And also not lose the microscope signal. But anyhow, we will be using microscopes to look at real things in real time during this biology section too. But here we have a picture of cheek cells. So he took a swab of the inside of his cheek, spread the cells on a microscope slide, put some blue dye on it, and he saw this. And so some of the cells are folded on each other and they're kind of squashed. But for example, here's a cell right here. You guys all see that? And then here's another one right here. So do you see the dark blue dot? What do we call that? Nucleus. It's the nucleus. Nucleus. And remember, that's where we find the DNA. So it's a very important part of the cell. This, I should tell you too, has been magnified about 20 times bigger than it is. So you can't see this with your naked eye at all. You'd have to magnify it about 20 times to see this level of detail. Okay, so the other thing about cells in terms of structure and function, what do you guys think I mean when I say structure and function? Amen.
Just how the cells are moving, just how they like help your body move, and just like how they help your body.
Okay, that's great. Different kinds of cells. I like what you said about the movement or the different kind of jobs that they do. So we're going to learn about different kinds of cells when we get to body systems. But there's lots of different kinds of cells. Your body is made up of trillions of different kinds of cells. Yes?
Like the parts of the cell, like
Yes. So the organelles, for example, their structure, their physical structure and how they're made is important to their function. And so that's a really important key point in biology as a whole, is that we study function based on structure. So we first usually look at an object of interest or a gene of interest and study it fully before we go in and make changes. So we will go over these individual organelles and their functions, but the important thing, again, to note is that their function is based on how they're built, their structure. Okay, so living things. I want you guys to tell me some characteristics of living. What makes something living versus non-living? What makes something, or we can go out the other direction, what makes something non-living? Yes, Allie? Something living? What do we know about living things?
Living things usually have like cells.
Cells? Okay, so that is one of the things, that they're based on cells. So as I said, to be living, you have to be made of cells. That's a great one. So living characteristics, made of cells. I'm going to add these to the slides, and these, what we decide on today, these characteristics, I'll add them to the slide, and so you guys have that in your notes. So made of cells, that's a really important one. Eamon?
they will eventually die.
Eventually die. Okay, yeah. That is a really important part. So not immortal. So the cells that make up an organism are not immortal, there is a really interesting exception to that, because cancer is technically when a cell forgets how to be a cell correctly in your body, and they become immortalized. They become unable to listen when the cells around them are saying, you need to die now, it's time for you to die now. They just are blah, 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 not listening. So they chemically do not listen to that anymore. So they divide and reproduce the whole bunch, and that's how you get a tumor. Okay, we'll talk more about that later. Okay, so what's another characteristic of living things? Brooklyn,
All living things need something to eat.
need to what?
Eat.
Eat, great. Okay, so they need to eat. They need to do what we call metabolism. I'm gonna turn the lights back on because I think you guys probably can't see the board very well. Thank you.
Get everything.
Sorry. You're warning. Okay, so so eat, metabolism. Have you guys heard that word metabolism before? What do you know about metabolism, Declan? Oh, you had something else. Does somebody want to talk about metabolism?
Metabolism is how fast you basically digest food.
How fast you digest
Like
food?
somebody
Yes.
may have a faster metabolism, which makes them like their food goes. It's gone faster.
It's gone faster. They go through the same amount of fuel at a faster rate. Metabolism, and yes, Allie, did you have something to add?
Blood. We need blood to live.
Blood. Okay, that's a really.
That's not true. Flowers don't have blood. And they live.
So we're gonna put a question mark.
Oh,
Because it turns out, guys, that plants have kind of their own blood. They have their own circulatory system. So when you cut into a plant stem, you know how the stuff oozes out? That comes out of their veins. They have food veins and they have water veins. Okay, let's see, regroup here. Steven and Dominic, yes, Declan?
Oxygen.
Oxygen, okay, that's another really good one.
Ice cream.
Ice cream, I'm with you, we need ice cream to live.
Do we write
Actually,
it down?
they talk
Do we
to
write
you.
blood and oxygen down?
Write them down, and then we're gonna think about those a little bit more. Yes, Chloe? Can you wait a few minutes? Okay, it'll just be like under 5 minutes. Okay. All right, guys, back up here. Back up here, please. Yes, Gabe? Okay, so we're gonna say gases. Gases, oxygen. Because plants require CO2 to do photosynthesis. Do you guys remember that? Well, what do we require?
Is that CO2 or C?
CO2. So we require a gas to live, but it's oxygen, right? Carbon dioxide is what that's called. Yes.
You can get a
Guys, you gotta be quiet. I cannot hear.
You get
Yes.
sick.
You can get sick. Okay. That's I like that one a lot. So disease. So with very few exceptions, basically every organism on the planet is subject to dying or being, if you're not going to die by natural causes, you're probably going to get eaten by a predator. So immortality doesn't really exist. But as I said with cancer, cancer is the exception. Those cells are immortal. They will live, they will keep reproducing forever. So how do we get more cells from one cell? How do we get more cells? Okay, hold that question. Just 1 second, just for 1 second. I just want to get an answer to this question. Who can answer my question? Which I've just probably forgotten.
How can you get more cells?
Cells split.
Oh, right, okay, thank you very much, I'm glad you're listening, that makes me feel good. So, right, how do we get more cells? Amen.
From cells basically multiplying.
Cells multiplying, exactly. So that is reproduction.
Wait, where are we writing?
You're just writing these on your notes under living characteristics. We're gonna come back and talk more about that. I know. I just didn't wanna, I wanted to give everyone a chance. Okay, so what are some non-living examples?
Can I question?
Oh, right, hold on.
Potato.
Yes, Stephanie.
Okay, since plants have cells, and to have cancer, you need to have cells for plants to have cancer.
They can have disease, but they don't have what we traditionally can, they can have tumors, but their tumors are different. So the best way I can answer that is to say that they can have, like, tumors grow, but it's a really good question, but it's not the same as animals. Okay, does that answer your question? You should look that up and read up on that, that's a really interesting. Amen.
They're immortal. It's not living, it's immortal.
Cancer cells?
Cells are not living.
Oh, okay, non-living. So immortality is, well, all right, not immortal, yes. You said what?
Immortal for non-living.
For non-living, you said immortal. I don't understand. So non-living things are immortal, is what we're saying. Like rocks. Guys, let's quiet the conversation and let's be respectful when other people are talking, okay? Yes, so, right, okay, so are you kind of saying things like that are in the geosphere and the hydrosphere and the atmosphere are, they're constant, they just go through cycles? That's a great observation. So do you guys understand that? The geosphere, the atmosphere, and the hydrosphere, those are based on cycles like we talked about, like the water cycle. And the amount of water is constant in the earth, the amount of rock material is constant, it just goes through a cycle. But, so that's a really neat characteristic of non-living things, is that they're immortal. That is very interesting.
They're not living, but not living.
We're just gonna say it means around forever and do not die. Right, because they don't have
They
a
can't
life to begin
die.
with, so how
Yeah.
could they die? Okay, what are some other, let's name some non-living things that affect the ecosystem. Amen.
Terrain.
Rain?
Terrain.
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 Do you guys know that word, terrain? Means like-
Minecraft.
It's
Oh, okay.
potato.
You all know that.
No.
All right.
It's
All right, we're getting pretty close to being done with slides, just a couple more. Don't stand on your stool. And would you like to say a non-living
I would
example?
love to say it's non-living.
Okay, what would be your
Does
example?
plastic count?
Plastic is non-living, that's for sure. What about like air and water?
Wait, I got one.
Yes?
With this cooking things. Can you do it?
Yes, Ryder.
Ice cream.
Ice cream is non-living.
How do you know?
It's amazing how much we have worked ice cream into today's
But-
topic.
But milk's an ice cream, so milk comes from cows.
Okay, so hold on, guys, just a second. You have a question?
What would you put fire in? Would you put like fire in the living or non-living?
Fire would be non-living.
Then how does it die?
It runs out of fuel.
Then why do people call it? It runs out of oxygen.
It runs out of oxygen and fuel. Yes, oxygen is important too. Brooklyn, guys,
Oh.
lower the voices.
What would you count anything that comes from a factory non-living?
I mean, there are so many different
about
kinds
a
of
human?
factories that I would hesitate
Like
to say.
Brooklyn, haven't you seen Boss Baby?
Exactly. We're not shouting across the room.
Like fossil fuels and stuff. Are those counted as living because they're gases?
So, guys, I can't hear Brooklyn because you're talking. Yes, one more time.
Like things like gases from factories, are those
Oh.
living? Because they're gases. and sometimes
Gases
those
are
things.
not living.
'Cause sometimes-
Oxygen is not living.
But what if they have bacteria in them?
The bacteria
Is
would
that-
be living. Bacteria is made of cells. So we're going to talk about bacteria here in just 1 second. Do you have a quick question?
So with this fire, does it just transfer its energy to like the wood?
It loses its energy as heat. Heat is a type of energy, and it's the most disorganized, kind of chaotic type of energy.
But
So
does
the
it
fuel.
transfer, like, some of its energy into the wood from using that?
So it would, I mean, what's left from a fire is burned up carbon, pretty much. So the fuel, when the fuel all gets used up or there's not enough oxygen, the fire will go out. Fire is a plasma, which means that it doesn't have, it's not cellular. That's the reason why it's not living, is because it's not made of cells.
I appreciate that you can answer the questions that they
Yes, you
have.
can put fire as
They
non-living.
are so.
So three
interested
basic parts
in
of the
science.
cell theory,
So
guys.
cool to
There are
see.
three basic rules that have to be followed to be adherent to the cell theory. That first one is all cells come from pre-existing cells. So do we have spontaneously generated life?
Yes.
No.
Now,
What?
in the universe, when there was no cells before, then.
Well, right, but so in the 4.6 billion years that the Earth was here, the first bacteria didn't occur for like several billion years. It was just the Earth kind of shaking out itself. And so life, when life began, it was bacteria. But bacteria is individual. I mean, it's its own living creature. So did you want to expand on your question?
It's just, how did the bacteria come to be? Because if you say, because bacteria has cells in it,
Right.
so how can, unless aliens can reproduce?
So the thing,
Then-
you're making an excellent point, which is that when life first started, it had to happen spontaneously. But now that it's established, cells come from other cells.
Yeah.
So there was a time, and we can talk about, I can include that in what we study the rest of the time if you guys are interested.
God did
It's
that.
very, 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 very interesting how life developed. So I'll put that in with things that you guys want to learn about. But for the cell theory, all cells come from pre-existing cells. One cell will make two cells through a process called mitosis.
Toes? That's what it sounds like. Toes. Yum, yum,
Mitosis. So that's how we get new cells from other cells. Guys, please, no barking in class. All right, so these are the three criteria. These are the three criteria that the cell theory is based on. So to be living, every living organism is made of one or more cells. Like I said, our bodies are trillions. We're talking trillions of cells. Lots of different kinds of cells. Some organisms are made of one cell, bacteria, and then I actually wanted to show you guys pond water today, but I couldn't get the microscope to be screen sharing yet. So I will eventually get that, hopefully by tomorrow, get that figured out.
She could help you.
Oh, okay. Okay, awesome. So we'll get that figured out, but we're gonna look at pond water because I want you guys to be aware that there's lots of living creatures that are single cell, and that's all they are. That's their whole body is one cell. So that includes bacteria and some of the animalcules that were mentioned in the video. Yes, Brooklyn?
So, we all came from stars, from when we were focusing on stars and that. Are stars cells, since we're cells, but then we're also...
Stars are not cells. Stars are made of gas.
Yeah.
What we said is that life eventually came from other molecules. So, right, the Big Bang, we learned about the Big Bang not too long ago. And so, yes, stars are not living in the context of cellular. They're a non-living type of energy. Okay, so I see how you guys can, think of a star as being alive, and because we talked about it dying and becoming a supernova. But it never fit these three criteria to begin with. So to be alive, you have to be made of cells. Remember how the cell is the basic unit of structure and function? So nerve cells look different from muscle cells, which look different from blood cells, because they have different functions. And all cells arrive from pre-existing cells. So those are the three things for today. Yes, Amy?
I have this massive blood cell that's this big. It's like a stuffed animal. So
Oh, yeah.
should I pretend to clap?
Sure.
No,
Yeah.
blood cell.
Yes, you may. Thank you for waiting.
I have a book about
Okay, guys, so now at this time you may move to work with your person of your choice or people of your choice. We're going to be working on pages 6.
I'm smarter than you.
And we will continue with this tomorrow, so I do not expect you to get all those pages done today by any means.
You're fully copying me.
Yes,
Karen. Okay,
no, keep all of your papers from today. We're going to finish them tomorrow. Riley, you want to work together?
Okay.
Have you ever heard of Kelvin? It's like Celsius and Kelvin. Kelvin is theoretical. It's 0 Kelvin. Total absence of energy. And so we don't really find that in the universe. Even in this, there are really remote places in space where like 1,000 square miles have covered atoms in it. There's still stuff
Right, amen. Yeah.
No, really, I love that.
Do that in student success. I'm getting it. Never got it.
Okay, go to your little classroom and look at the slides. Raise your hand if you have questions.
I'm actually better. I don't know why. Where did you get that?
We're going to finish this tomorrow. Bring the slides, the cells. You've got cells on your brain. So we're just going from here to here. And you want to probably finish it today. So you can start with the question. I would read that.
The packet. I just tripped. I'm fine.
You guys need to be working or we'll have to go back to initial work. Okay. Guys, I want to see you on deck and stop making noises. So I want to see pencils on paper. And you want to look at your slides. Stop recording, please.
Hey, can I ask you guys a question? Is it typical that the best teachers should things like spend time to work on something together? Is that typical?
Yeah.
Whose is this? I found it on the ground. Guys, I highly recommend putting your name on your notes too, so that if you lose them, you can find them, and you're gonna want those for your quiz. Plus, we're not done with them yet. We need to put some more.
They have no meaning. Wait, go to Barkus. I'll be right here. I don't think this is what. Hey, what are you doing? Put her down.
I just didn't want her to be. I just didn't want Amy to select her. I was just didn't want her to be. Oh yeah.
It's okay now.
It's okay now. What did I do?
The bell's gonna ring in like 1 minute. Do you have any procedures for at the end?
I didn't say that.
If so, we probably should start now.
You didn't call me an old lady, right? Hell, you didn't call me an old lady, right?
Guys, we have about a minute and a half. You're gonna want to back up. You have about a minute and a half.
Oh,